Made For single is out today. Come on. We're so excited for it. It's truly incredible. And if you know me, you know like I don't like to call it a single, but I truly think like this song is a story. Like it's a story of the faithfulness of God and what He's brought us from. And so when I wrote this song, I was maybe in Jersey, straight from New Mexico, and I was in Jersey maybe for a week. And I was sitting in my office and I was listening to this message called "Made for This." And if you haven't heard it, go to fusionchurch.cc to listen to it. And I was listening to this and I was like, man, that would make a great song. And so I began to write this song and it just began to like minister to me. Like, man, every victory we were made for. Like every breakthrough, it doesn't matter what you've done in your past, it doesn't matter what you've done, like you were made for victory. You were made for financial breakthrough, you were made for breakthrough in your life. And it just began to minister. It's like, man, like I am made for this, and that bridge just tears me up of just like, Lord, you say come. Like you just simply say, come and taste and see. He never forces us to do anything, but he says simply, come, taste and see. And as I began to write this, I was really writing it for just Fusion Church. Like I was writing it for you guys. Like I was writing it for anyone coming into Fusion Church, that they would be able to sing this song. And because it's a spiritual marker for this house. And we don't just write songs just to write them, and we don't record them just to record them, but like we really write songs to tell a story of the faithfulness of Jesus and what he's doing in this church, like what he's been bringing us through and where he's taking us. And Made For was a spiritual marker. And hopefully every time you listen to it, or every time you sing it, or every time you worship to it, it just takes you back to, oh man, remember what Jesus did at Fusion Church back when, and when they were about to move into a new building, remember what he did. And that's kind of like this spiritual marker song for this church. And so I just want to encourage you, listen to it. It's literally everywhere. iTunes, Spotify, whatever. But man, like I hope it blesses you. And I honestly can't wait to hear about the testimonies of the song, of when we listen to it and the breakthrough that's happening in people's lives. So feel free to come up to me, email me, whatever you want to do. Tell me about it, because I'm so excited. And I just need to say, Pastor Brendan has been for this the entire way. Like he was been pioneering this and pushing this the whole way. I'm so honored to have a pastor like that. And so this morning I really want to talk about, we can give it up for him. He's doing great. Come on. Yes. So I really want to talk about, if I had a title for this message, it would be Made For Intimacy. And I know I'm the worship director, and people are like, well, is he not supposed to talk about worship? And so, but we just got out of an amazing Worship Defined series, like an amazing thing. So if you really want to dig into what worship is, like go to fusionchurch.cc, and you can watch literally every sermon by Pastor Sam, Pastor Tom, and let's be real, like those dudes are anointed. Am I right? Like Pastor Sam, Pastor Tom, they are anointed speakers. And so go back and listen to that. And so this word intimacy, as I read the room when I say intimacy, all of a sudden all the men go, ugh. And there's another worship leader talking about it, and all the women are like, woo, let's go. But I feel like it's such an important thing. Like intimacy is such an important word, such an important topic, that the enemy is constantly trying to rob us of this one thing. And I just feel like we need to talk about this in church. Like we need to talk about intimacy of the Lord. And as I begin to look at the definition of intimacy, it just kind of blew me away of like these words that were like describing this other word. Let me read it to you. It says close familiarity or friendship, closeness, warmth, confidence, attachment. Like these words are very specific. And as I begin to ponder about this, I just begin to think, doesn't this sound a lot like who Jesus is? Doesn't this sound like the heart of the Father? Closeness, like attachment, like that's who Jesus is. And so as I begin to like prepare for this weekend and just what the Lord was wanting to say, I came across Luke chapter 8, and I just love, there are some amazing spiritual women in the Bible. I think they are incredible. The way that they hunger for the Lord, they waste everything at the feet of Jesus. They're amazing. And this story is about a woman who is desperate for breakthrough in her life. And in Luke chapter 8, it says, and so a little backstory too, Jesus I mean, Jesus is crazy. Like Jesus had just got done like casting demons out of this guy and throwing them into a pig. Like a herd of pigs, and these pigs are going crazy. And they fall off a cliff, and all the townspeople are like, "Whoa, yo, Jesus, this is this is a little too much. Like, you're a nice guy and everything, and that was great. He's normal now. Like, you're doing some cool stuff, but this is crazy. I think you got to leave." And so Jesus is like, okay. And so he leaves. And so this is where the story picks up. In Luke chapter 8, it actually says, as Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him. So there's tons of people around. Everyone's coming to see what is happening. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. And so I love that line for a second. The world automatically labeled her like unhealable, like already labeled her. Remember that. And 44, she came up behind Jesus, just touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. And then Jesus asked, who touched me? And when they all denied it, Peter said, Master, what are you talking about, bro? Like, there's people crowding and pressing against you. Everyone's around you. What are you talking about? Who touched you? But then Jesus said, someone specific touched me. I know that power has gone out from me. Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at the feet of Jesus. In the presence of the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. And then he said to her, daughter, you are healed. Go in peace. Come on, will you pray with me real quick? Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you of this invitation that you always bring to us to come into your presence. But Lord, that you don't force yourself on anyone. You don't force yourself on anything. But Lord, that you just simply invite us and you simply say, come and taste and see. Come and follow me. And so, Lord, we take you up on that invitation right now. Yeah, your presence is here. And Lord, we acknowledge that and we honor that. And so, Lord, I just pray that our hearts would just begin to be prepared to hear from you. In Jesus' name, amen. And so I have this story. If you don't know anything about me, I'm actually not from Jersey. I've only lived here for about a year, and I'm from Oklahoma. Come on, Oklahoma City Thunder, Boomer Sooner, that's all. Don't talk to me about Kevin Durant, okay? Like, that's a sore subject. Anyways, when I grew up in Oklahoma, and I was visiting my mom one summer, and she had this pool, and there's like a community pool. It was awesome. I was about 10 years old, and so I was at this pool, and I had met a friend, and he was awesome. He was a little older than me. He's like 14, but you know, he was like one of those friends that was just so cool. He was athletic, and I'm like completely opposite of that. Even as a kid, I was like not as cool, and I was like not athletic. So he was awesome. I was like, we're friends. So we were about friends for a day, and it was awesome. It was a great time. We went swimming. Anyways, so this guy, he taught me how to dive. Like, he taught me how to dive like Michael Phelps. And I'm telling you, it was exactly like Michael Phelps. Like, I was nailing this dive, and it was awesome. And anyway, so we had these lifeguards, and there was a lifeguard switch, and this girl came in, and immediately this my friend looks at me and goes, man, isn't she beautiful? Like, she's crazy, like, good looking. And I just looked at him like, bro, I'm 10. Like, I'm 10, like, but I didn't say that. But I'm thinking, like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm 10 years old, dude. I just want McDonald's or something. Like, we're swimming. I'm diving. And then, of course, I didn't say that. I looked at him, and I just go, dude, I know, right? I was going to say something to you, but you said it first, so you got dibs. Like, I'm going to be that good friend. You got this, man, but I got whatever you need. And so as we were swimming and we built up courage, he looks at me, and he goes, bro, this would be such a good idea. What if you threw an inner tube out in the water and you dove right through it? It would knock the socks off of her. And I just look at him like, this is the best idea that I've ever heard in my 10 years of living. Like, of course I'm going to the Olympics. Like, of course I'm gonna do this. And so we throw this, and the thing to know about the inner tube is really hard for some reason. It wasn't like a soft float. It was like really hard and had a rope attached to it. So I threw it out on the deep end. An important detail to know is when I was 10 years old, I was, as my mom would say, husky. I loved video games. I loved food, Snickers, you name it, I was eating it. And so this inner tube, like I said, it was hard. So I threw it out, and I square up, and I run, and I nail it. Like, nail it. But the thing gets stuck right around, and I mean, it's deep. Like, I can't get out of it. And so I am literally head in the water, feet are kicking like this. I'm literally drowning. Like, I am desperate for air. I am literally gonna die. Like, I'm thinking, this is what I get for being prideful. This is what I get for, I'm going to my Olympic dream is gone. I'm done. Like, I'm dying in a pool trying to impress a girl that, for my friend. Like, this doesn't even make sense. And so luckily there's a rope, and this guy pulls me out, and I just, and you know, the whole nasty thing. And I know that sounds like a scene from Sandlot, but this really happened. Like, this really happened. And so, which brings me to my first point. And just to let you know, closure, like, he didn't get the girl, and nothing worked out. I didn't even see him again after that. It was awesome. So it brings me to my first point. It takes desperation for lasting intimacy. It takes desperation. When I was drowning, when I was literally sucking in water, like, I was desperate for air. Like, I needed it, or it was not gonna be good. Like, I needed something to shift in that moment. And I love what this desperation this woman had. And she didn't even know it. Like, it says in verse, this woman was just so desperate. She says, she came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak. So she didn't even have courage to confront him. She was surrounded by people, and everyone had labeled her, you're unhealable. Even the Bible says that. And in this moment, this woman is just she doesn't know what else to do, but she just knows, okay, if I can just touch the edge of his cloak, then something in my life has to give. I know, like, I just have to try this Jesus thing just one time. One time I just need breakthrough in my life. So if I can just come up behind him and just touch his cloak, then something will shift in my life. Something has to give. And if we're honest, like, what if we came into church like this? Like, what if we came into church with an expectancy for God to break through in our lives every time we step into church? If I could just sing one line of that worship song, then I know something in my finances has to give. If I can just be in that chair and just sit and listen to worship, then I know something in my marriage, it has to give. Something God has to break through, because it's a promise. There's power in his name. So when we come in Jesus, like, I don't know what to pray. Did you know that the Lord hears our broken prayers? I remember just sitting in my room one night and literally didn't know what to pray, going through this season, and I literally sit down and I go, and immediately I heard the Lord say, I hear you. I hear you. Immediately there's breakthrough. You see, when we're intentional about seeking the Lord and then we're expectant for it, God always shows up. He will break through in your life. And so this woman, she's so desperate. I know that the world is labeling me that can't be true. Like, this is not how it can be. And it's just touch the edge of the cloak. Then something has to give and breakthrough has to happen. We got to be expectant people. What if we came into our jobs with the expectancy like this too? That says, God, like, I know my workplace is living for the world so much, but I'm not okay with it. Lord, like, I'm so desperate for breakthrough in my job. I'm so desperate for breakthrough in my family. I'm so desperate for breakthrough for my son or for my daughter or for my family member. Like, Lord, I'm expectant. I need you to come. I need you to break through. Because God always shows up. It just may not look like what we think it's going to. Like, we can't put God in a box. We really can't. I know we hear that all the time, but like, he's the God of the universe. Like, his ways are higher than our ways. And it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. But we have to trust that, like, Jesus is for us. He's never against us. Even in the midst of confusion, even when this woman was confused, why am I unhealable? Like, why can't I be healed? Why am I like labeled as this? But she had to believe, if I can just get close to Jesus, it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. That expectancy level. And I truly, truly believe when we come into our jobs with expectancy like that for breakthrough, when we come into church with an expectancy for God to break through in our lives, then we start seeing our atmospheres begin to shift. But no one knows why. You're not even talking about Jesus. You're not, but everyone's like, what is happening? And then we're starting to see revival, not just in our church. Come on, we're seeing revival in our schools. We're seeing revival in our workplaces. We're seeing a revival in this region. And it's simply because we are desperate sons and daughters. And point number 2 is Jesus always initiates intimacy. He always does. He always seeks. So what happens when this woman touches the cloak of Jesus? And immediately, Jesus asks, who touched me? Like, initially, who touched me? And then Peter says, Master, what are you talking about? Like, so it's so funny, because if I was there and Jesus says to me, and he just says, who touched me? I would just look at him and be like, what are you talking about? Do you see these? It's like a Justin Bieber concert out here right now. Like, there is people literally everywhere, like snagging and touching you. What are you talking about? And so I'm pretty sure all the disciples were thinking this, like, Jesus, what are you talking about? But Peter had the audacity. He just couldn't, Peter just has to blurt out everything that do you know those people in your life that just say the first thing that comes to their mind? This is Peter. He doesn't even think. He just goes, Jesus, what are you talking about? Everyone's touching you. And I just feel like all the disciples in that moment just like, oh, snap. Like, how many of those moments weren't recorded in the Bible, but they happened, where Peter just blurted something and everyone's just like, well, Jesus, answer him. Like, Jesus, answer him. And Jesus asked, who touched me? I know that the power has gone from me. And it just begs the question too, like, why would Jesus ask? Like, why would he ask, who touched me? Okay, so if we believe that Jesus is the Messiah, he is fully God and fully man, then we have to believe that he knows everything. Like, this is the same God who literally breathed and the stars were formed. This is the same God who took dust and breathed life into it. This is the same God who formed the world. This is the same God who parted the Red Sea. Like, he knows everything. But yet he asks, who touched me? Does that not, like, when I read that, it just, like, I don't understand that. Like, why would he ask that? And then, as we look at it, it's amazing. You see, Jesus asked, who touched me? To give this woman an opportunity to seek, to respond, and to minister to her. Like, what kind of God does that? Because Jesus, even though he knew all things and he knew this woman was going to come and touch his cloak, he didn't have to say anything. She would have still been healed. And he would have walked away, and she still would have been amazed. But yet he stops. He stops everything. He says, who touched me? And immediately, I love to think that when he turns around, he sees the eyes of this woman, and they just lock eyes. And I love, one of my mentors said this, what is worship? Worship is looking so deeply into the eyes of Jesus that you see what he sees about you. Come on, and I love to think in that moment, he looked around, they locked eyes, and immediately she saw who she was and not what the world labeled her. Because God always initiates intimacy. He always has that invitation, no matter where you are in life. Every person in here, it doesn't matter where you are. He's always pursuing you. And so he locks eyes with her, and then I love what it says. In verse 47, then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling at his feet. So now she's seeking and responding. So now she noticed, she's like, okay, well, Jesus sees me. I can't go unnoticed. And so all she knows to do is to fall at his feet and worship. And then verse 48, and it says, in the presence of the people, verse 47, she's told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. So this woman was healed for maybe 30 seconds or a minute, and she's already ministering to people. So come on, there's no excuse of how long you've been a Christian or whatever. Like, God uses the meek. She humbled herself, and then she began to minister not only to the people, she began to minister to Jesus. This is where I was, but this is who I am now. Just one encounter from you, Jesus. This is what happened. Just one touch from you, because I'm telling you, it's all it takes. The moment we encounter the love of Jesus, we never leave the same. If we come with that expectancy, every time we come in here and we sing, we're not just singing karaoke. We're literally singing to the heart of God. We're singing through our circumstances, and we're saying, look, I know my financial circumstances say, like, I'm not in a good place, but every victory I was made for, every breakthrough I was made for, and suddenly worship becomes a tool that cuts through the lies, and it cuts through the fear. And in this moment, she says, God, I don't know what to do, but I'm trembling at your feet, and I worship you. And then I love Jesus' response to her response and her seeking. He says, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. Which brings me to my third point. Intimacy builds confidence. It's like confidence. Because in verse 47, it says, the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. And in the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she'd been instantly healed. And so verse 47, it was, okay, she found her courage. Like, she came trembling. She noticed everyone was looking. She had no way out. So maybe she found some courage. And she's like, Lord, this is what happened. But that's not where her courage comes in. Like, I think her courage comes in 48. When Jesus responded and said, daughter, your faith has healed you. You see, when we lock eyes with Jesus, when we're with Jesus, when we worship Jesus, he constantly reminds us of who we really are. And in that moment, when they locked eyes and he saw this woman, he says, daughter, and confirms her of what she really is and not what the world has labeled her. And so when we come into worship, it's like that. When Jesus, every time, when I'm in my alone time with Jesus, and let me just tell you, like, I never spend time with Jesus like the same way. Like, if you're like God's not boring. Maybe, like, if we ever have that thought, man, I can't spend alone time with Jesus because it's just boring. Well, God's not boring. Maybe we're just boring. And so, like, I had that revelation, okay, maybe I'm boring. And so, like, I love to spend time with Jesus on my paddleboard or, like, doing something besides just sitting there. Like, sometimes I like to switch it up a bit. And so, but what I found is every time that I'm in the presence of the Lord, like, he never tells me he loves me the same way. It's exactly what I need. If I'm feeling insecure, if I'm feeling like I'm not good enough, which I'm a worship leader. I don't know if you know this, but worship leaders are some of the most insecure people on the planet. And I feel insecure all the time. I'm just being real with you. I feel insecure all the time. Sometimes I just don't feel good enough. But I don't seek for worldly things to fulfill that. But when I'm in with Jesus, he tells me exactly what I need. Oh, Blake, oh, don't. Did you not know what I've done for you? You're a son. You're a son of the living King. You are made for such a time as this. And then all of a sudden, when I look at Jesus and he begins to tell me who I am, just like he was telling this girl, he says, daughter. He was calling her what she really is, which is royalty, which is she's an heir to the throne. She is a son and a daughter of the living King. And immediately, when we begin to be with Jesus and he confirms our identity in him, like, we're not labeled by the world. I hope we understand that. You're not labeled by your occupation. You're not a teacher. You're not a social worker. You're not a worship leader. You're not a pastor. You're not this. You're not that. You are a son and a daughter of the living King. And when we begin to operate in that, then we see something crazy happen. And so what happens is when we begin to operate in what we know who we are, the enemy knows that's bad. Because then all of a sudden, when I step out of this lie that says you have to earn something and what you do is what defines you, because it's not what we do that defines us. Like, there's nothing we can do. But the moment we step into what Jesus has defined us as, then there begins to come a supernatural confidence, a supernatural authority that we begin to walk in. And then all of a sudden, when we walk into our jobs or when we walk into our schools, we're not walking in with a lie attached to us. We're walking in with absolute truth and confidence of who we are. And all of a sudden, people are like, what is up with Susan? What is up with Joey? What is up with, like, I don't understand. There's something different about them, and I don't even understand what it is. But it's because you were with Jesus, and he's speaking about who you really are. And then all of a sudden, we're walking around. Once we have a church and we have a people that are walking around as confident sons and daughters, the enemy knows it's game over. Because now we're operating in the way that Jesus was meant for us to operate. And we see revival. It's insane. Spending time with Jesus it's the best thing. Like, I'm so grateful for the cross. I really, really am. Like, there's salvation in the cross. And, man, I think we're going to see more people in heaven than we expect because of what the cross did. Because the cross really does bring salvation. But I truly think it pairs in comparison of what Jesus, fully God, without form, the Bible says, limited himself into a baby. Like, the humility behind that. And then he comes as a baby to earth. He, like, forsakes heaven. Like, that was only for one reason. Like, we serve a God who came to us. Like, we didn't have to. He initiated for us. He came from heaven for us. Like, what kind of a God does that? Like, and so every time, like, I think about the cross or I think about, like, what Jesus did, it just blows my mind. I don't understand it. I don't understand this kind of love. Like, who would do that? But Jesus has such a heart for humanity. He has such a heart for people. And the thing is, the more we're with Jesus, the more that we're on our face, or the more that we're in his presence at home or in the car. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a church because Jesus is everywhere. And the moment that we're in his presence, the thing is, the more we look at Jesus, the more we look like Jesus. And the more that we speak to Jesus, the more that we sound like Jesus. And we start cultivating a heart of Jesus. The more we're with Jesus, we're cultivating his heart. And what is his heart? Like, what is the heart of God? It's people. His heart is people. His heart is you. His heart is me. His heart is that boss that you can't stand who is saying stuff behind your back. He has a heart for him too. He has a heart for those people who the world has already labeled. That's who he is. And the moment we're in his presence, the moment we're spending time with him, we're starting to look like him. We're starting to sound like him. We're starting to cultivate his heart for him. And then all of a sudden, we're starting to see something in this region shift. We're starting to see something in this church shift. And I'm here to encourage you. The enemy wants to think that you're surrounded when you're really surrounded by him. And if we can operate in confidence, and if we can operate in all that God has said we can operate, we're going to see something amazing break through. Because let me tell you, God took this 10-year-old pudgy kid from Oklahoma. I don't even know how I ended up in Jersey. But God has a plan for everyone. Like Psalms 8 says, He knew you before you were even in your mother's womb. When you were just a blob, he had plans for you. He knew what you were going to do in your workplace. He knew what you were going to do in your family. He knew what you were going to do in your church, serving as a greeter, serving as a barista in the coffee place. He knew the people that only you could reach. But more importantly, he knew the way that you would move his heart. He knew the way that you would minister right to him. And I just want to encourage you that you move the heart of God. The lie that entangles you, that your past keeps you from intimacy with the Lord, that's a lie. Because if we believe that, if we truly believe that God, if we can only come into the presence of the God if we do something right? Like, I can only come into his presence if I do something right. But then, and so in the flip side, we can't come into his presence if we did something wrong. There's like shame attached to it. But when we do something right, it's like God owes us one. And that's not how it works. That's not grace. He says, come and taste and see the goodness. And that was an invitation, no matter where you are in life, no matter where you are, that invitation still stands. It's never void. It doesn't matter what you do. He's always going to initiate you. He's always coming after your heart, and he's not going to stop. But in his grace, he meets us exactly where we are. You don't have to have it all together to have intimacy with Jesus. You just have to have hunger. You just have to want it. So come on, will you stand with me? Come on, I feel like there's an invitation today to really, if you haven't hungered for the Lord in a long time, or maybe you're in a dry season, that's okay. But come on, let's not be okay with not being hungry. Let's not be okay with not hungering for the presence of the Lord. And so right now, we're going to respond to Jesus. We're going to respond to what he's speaking right now. And I just want to invite you, like, let's press in, let's lean in. I feel like the presence of the Lord is here. He is here right now. So dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we respond to what you're speaking to right now. Lord, for your invitation that says, come, taste and see. Lord, no matter where we are in life, Lord, we just say that we surrender to you right now. Lord, we prepare our hearts for you, Jesus. Lord, that we would sing through our circumstances. We would sing right to your heart. So come on, church, we're going to lift this up, and we're going to proclaim this today. Every circumstance, every breakthrough you were made for. So come on, we declare this today.